Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, Chapter 1, Down the Rabbit Hole. Alice sits drowsily by a riverbank, bored by the book her older sister reads to her. Out of nowhere, a white rabbit runs past her, fretting that he will be late. The rabbit pulls a watch out of his waistcoat pocket and runs across the field and down a hole. Alice impulsively follows the rabbit and tumbles down the deep hole that resembles a well, falling slowly for a long time. As she floats down, she notices that the sides of the well are covered with cupboards and shelves. She plucks a marmalade jar from one of the shelves. The jar is empty, so Alice sets it down on another shelf. With nothing else to do, she talks aloud to herself, wondering how far she has fallen and if she will fall right through to the other side of the earth. She continues to speak aloud, daydreaming about her cat Dinah. In the midst of imagining a conversation the two of them might have, she abruptly lands. Unhurt, Alice gets up and catches sight of the white rabbit as he vanishes around a corner. Alice approaches a long corridor lined by doors. The doors are all locked, so Alice tests them with a key that she finds on a glass table. After searching around, Alice discovers a small door behind a curtain. She tests the key again and finds that it opens up to a passage and a garden. Since the door is much too small for Alice to squeeze through, she ventures back to the table with the hope that she might find something there that would help her. A bottle marked, "Drink Me," sits on the table. Alice drinks the contents of the bottle after inspecting it to be sure it does not contain poison. Alice immediately shrinks, and though she can now fit through the door, she realizes she has left the key on the tabletop high above her. She desperately cries and scolds herself for crying before catching sight of a small cake with the words, "Eat me," underneath the table. Alice eats the cake with the hope that it will change her size, but becomes disappointed when nothing happens. Chapter 2. The Pool of Tears. After finishing the cake that says, "Eat me," Alice grows to 9 feet tall and finds that she can barely get an eye down to the doorway. She begins to cry, and her massive tears form a sizable pool at her feet. The white rabbit reappears and mutters to himself about keeping a duchess waiting. Alice attempts to speak to him, but he scuttles away, leaving behind his gloves and fan. Alice picks up the fan and begins fanning herself. She muses on the possibility that she may not be Alice but someone else entirely. To determine if she knows all that Alice is supposed to know, she starts to recite her lessons. She finds that she gets the recitations wrong and considers the idea that she may not be Alice, but possibly a girl she knows named Mabel. Since Mabel knows very little, it makes sense to Alice that her confusion over the lessons must indicate that she has somehow become Mabel. If she is Mabel, there is no reason for her to find her way out of the well to reach society. Even though she's confused about her identity, she knows that she must find a way out of the well and back to the world above ground. Alice realizes that the fanning motion causes her to shrink, so she fans herself down to a size that will allow her to fit through the door. Once again, Alice has forgotten the key, but before she can become upset, she tumbles into a pool of salt water. She thinks she has fallen into the sea, but quickly realizes that she is swimming in her own giant tears. As she swims, she comes across a mouse, whom she asks for help. The mouse doesn't understand Alice, so she tries to speak French to him. She recites a line from her French lessons, inquiring after a cat. At the mention of the cat, the mouse leaps with fright. Alice apologizes but then absent-mindedly chatters about her cat Dinah. The mouse becomes offended, so she changes the subject to dogs. The talk of dogs only frightens the mouse more, and he begins to swim away. Alice promises to stop talking about cats and dogs if the mouse will come back. The mouse swims back to Alice, telling her to follow him to shore where he will tell his history to explain his hatred for cats and dogs. Now accompanied by several other animals that have fallen into the pool, including a duck, a dodo, a lory, and an eaglet, Alice and the mouse swim to shore. Chapter 3. A Caucus Race and a Long Story. Alice and the group of animals land on the bank and focus on getting dry. Alice begins arguing with the lory, but the mouse interjects and commands everyone to sit down and listen to a history lesson. The mouse reasons that the story of William the Conqueror would be best since this story is the driest thing it knows. After completing the story, Alice and the other animals are still wet, prompting the dodo to suggest a caucus race. The dodo marks out a course, sets everyone in place, and yells, "Go!" The animals run around haphazardly until the dodo declares half an hour later that the race is over. The dodo says that all of them have won the caucus race and elects Alice to confer prizes. Alice passes mints to all the animals, leaving herself without a prize. Finding a thimble, she hands it to the dodo, who in turn presents it back to her as her prize. Alice solemnly accepts the thimble but cannot help feeling that the gesture is absurd. After eating their mints, the mouse declares that it will tell its tale. Alice confuses tail and focuses on the mouse's appendage as it talks about Fury prosecuting a mouse in court. The mouse chides Alice for not paying attention, and though Alice apologizes, the two misunderstand each other and the mouse leaves in a huff. The other animals lament the mouse's absence, and Alice mentions that she wishes her cat Dinah were there to bring the mouse back. Alice continues to tell the animals that Dinah eats birds, which causes all of the animals to scatter in fear. Alone again, Alice begins to cry until she hears the distant pattering of footsteps. Chapter 4. The rabbit needs Little Bill's help. The white rabbit approaches Alice, looking for his gloves and fan. Alice searches dutifully but cannot find them. The white rabbit mistakes Alice for his housemaid, Mary Ann, and commands her to go to his house and fetch his things. Startled by the rabbit's demands, Alice obeys and soon finds his house. As she walks, she thinks about how strange it is to take orders from animals and imagines that her cat Dinah might start ordering her around when she gets back home. Inside of the house, she finds the gloves and fan, as well as a little bottle labeled, "Drink Me." Curious to find out what the contents of the bottle will do, Alice drinks the liquid. Before she can finish, she begins growing rapidly and can barely fit in the room. Her arm dangles from a window and her foot becomes wedged in the chimney. Alice decides that her adventures are like a fairy tale and imagines writing her own stories once she grows up. Given her new size, she reasons that perhaps she has in fact grown up and will never age. The white rabbit interrupts her train of thought by calling for his fan and gloves. He tries to storm into the house, but Alice's giant arm prevents the door from opening. The rabbit tries to climb through the window, but Alice bats him away with her giant hand. The rabbit calls out for his servant, Pat, and the two begin to plot a way to deal with Alice when she swats them away again. The rabbit and Pat recruit another servant, a lizard named Bill, to climb down the chimney, but Alice launches him into the air with her foot. A crowd gathered outside calls to burn down the house. Alice threatens to send Dinah to get them and they begin hurling pebbles through the window at her face. The pebbles transform into cakes, and reasoning that the cakes might cause her to become smaller, Alice eats one and shrinks. She leaves the house and encounters a mob of animals ready to rush her. Alice flees and heads into a wood where she thinks about how she might return to her normal size and find the garden. A sharp bark causes her to look up at an enormous puppy standing over her. Afraid it might be hungry, Alice tires it out by teasing it with a stick. She then sets off, wondering what she might eat or drink to return to her original height. She comes across a giant mushroom and climbs to the top, discovering a blue caterpillar smoking a hookah with an air of indifference. Chapter 5. Advice from a caterpillar. Alice comes across a caterpillar that is resting on top of a giant mushroom and smoking a hookah pipe. The two stare at each other in silence for a while before the caterpillar asks Alice, "Who are you?" Alice has trouble explaining who she is to the antagonistic and contemptuous caterpillar. Dejected, she turns to leave, but the caterpillar calls her back to recite a poem. The caterpillar duly notes that she recites the poem incorrectly and goes on to ask what size she would like to be. Alice states that being 3 inches tall is a wretched height, which insults the 3-inch tall caterpillar. The caterpillar crawls away in a huff, but not before telling Alice that eating one side of the mushroom will make her grow larger and eating the other side will make her grow smaller. Alice tastes the right-hand portion of the mushroom and shrinks. She next tries part of the left-hand portion of the mushroom, and her neck grows so long that her head is above the treetops. Realizing she cannot get the other part of mushroom to her mouth, she attempts to reorient herself when a pigeon attacks her. The pigeon has mistaken Alice for a serpent who wants to eat its eggs. Alice assures the pigeon that she is not a serpent, and the pigeon skulks back to its nest, leaving Alice to nibble at the 2 pieces of the mushroom until she returns to her original height. Back at her proper size, Alice wanders around the forest looking for the garden when she encounters a 4-foot-tall house. She decides to visit the house and eats the portion of the mushroom to reduce her size to 9 inches tall. Chapter 6. A Pig and Pepper. From the wood, Alice sees a fish in footman's livery approach the house and knock on the door. A similarly dressed frog answers the door and receives a letter inviting the Duchess to play croquet with the Queen. After the fish footman leaves, Alice approaches the frog footman, who sits on the ground staring stupidly up at the sky. Alice knocks at the door, but the frog footman explains that now that she is outside, no one will answer her knock since the people inside are making too much noise to hear her. He tells her he plans to sit there for days and seems unsurprised when the door opens a crack and a plate flies out and grazes his nose. Annoyed with his idiotic manner, Alice opens the door and finds herself in a kitchen. A duchess nurses a baby, a grinning cat sits on the hearth, and a cook stands at the stove, dumping pepper into a cauldron of soup. The pepper causes the duchess and the baby to sneeze incessantly. Alice inquires why the cat grins and learns from the Duchess that it is a Cheshire cat. Wondering aloud why a cat would grin at all, the Duchess insults Alice, telling her that she must not know very much. Meanwhile, the cook hurls objects randomly at the Duchess and the baby, including fire irons, saucepans, and plates. Alice tells the cook to mind herself, and attempts to change the subject of conversation by bringing up the Earth's axis. The Duchess mishears Alice, and thinking she is talking about axes, spontaneously shouts, "Chop off her head." The Duchess starts to sing a nasty lullaby to the baby, roughly tussling it as she sings. Upon finishing, she flings the baby at Alice and hurries out of the room to prepare for croquet with the Queen. Alice takes the baby outside, only to discover that it is a pig. After she lets the pig toddle off, she encounters the Cheshire cat again, grinning broadly as it rests on the bough of a tree. After inquiring of the Cheshire cat where she might go next, he tells her that no matter where she goes she will end up somewhere. The Cheshire cat arbitrarily suggests she visit the Mad Hatter and the March Hare, but warns her that they are both mad. When Alice responds that she does not want to be among mad people, he tells her that all people are mad, and if she is in Wonderland, she must be mad too. Alice attempts to press the point, but the Cheshire cat changes the subject, telling Alice that it will see her at the Queen's croquet match later. The Cheshire cat vanishes and reappears before fading to nothing but a disembodied grin, leaving Alice to travel onward to the March Hare's house. Upon discovering that the house is larger than she is, Alice consumes a portion of the caterpillar's mushroom and grows to 2 feet tall.